Good afternoon. I was going to speak for about 45 minutes, well now maybe 42, and give you about 15 minutes for questions, but actually I'm going to keep it a little bit shorter so you can ask more questions, because I do not know what you are interested in, but some of the things I'm saying might not be relevant, so it will be more interesting if I can address your questions. So I will try to do this. I hope the room doesn't go silent the last 20 minutes. I was born in Istanbul, and I grew up there until I was 17. And then I went to France for my college education, and I lived there for many years. I'm a veteran of the French Army. And I came to the United States to start the American affiliate of a French company, a construction company. I'm an engineer by training with a master's degree as well, business degree as well. And I started my own company about 26 years ago with my wife, equal partners, and literally with $1,000. And we built it from there. And I'm interested in creating, urban, pedestrian-friendly environments. And I very much like retail because it's much better than building warehouses for real estate. You interact with people, you try to be responsive to the life trends. You can hear me in the back, right? Yeah. So that personal background is important to understand what follows because I grew up in Istanbul, in Turkey. And Istanbul, probably a little bit, is between Asia and Europe. Actually, in high school, I was living in Europe, going to high school every day in Asia. And it's a very multicultural community. I mean, people of multiple religions, multiple languages. And so I lived with this, and I learned the relativity of things, how, things that are granted in one culture are not perceived as being true in another culture or another religion, all of them being dogmatic in a certain way. And you see good people professing different religions, speaking different languages, then they say, okay, well, nobody has really the truth because there are good people everywhere. But more importantly, in Istanbul, I lived in a city who has been the capital of an empire, for 1,600 years. I mean, that's important to kind of listen to, right? 1,600 years, one city, the same city, capital of that empire, the biggest church in town, all 1,500 years old. These are, so you are born and live in a place, where you see the stones and the architecture and the harmony and also in a Mediterranean culture when food is important, where, gathering around a meal like the Spaniards, like the French, like the Italians, same in that culture, are important. So I learned the sense of place, but without ever studying it as an architect. I just lived in it. I didn't know it was anything special. That's all I knew. And sometime I tell myself, I hope there's no one here from Chillicothe, but if you are from Chillicothe, Ohio, and you've been to high school there, and then all you did went to OSU or OU and never been outside Ohio, it's very difficult to imagine, how, a Mediterranean culture could be, or how France can be, or what can be. You can read all the encyclopedias you want, you can go online and so forth. It's never the same as being born there. And that was a big advantage for me. And that's one of the biggest strengths of America in a way, because it brings people from different cultures, So we bring all that culture here and then integrate it in an environment that encourages, personal development and be able to take risks and do things. So to, again, fast forward, so I came to the US in Houston, Texas, and first to start that French company's affiliate in Texas. So we're building industrial buildings, using some prefabricated technologies. And I'm an engineer, so plenty in my element. And I learned a little bit of real estate. The little real estate I learned was to build industrial parks, warehouses, like in this town, Pizzuti does, the big warehouses on the side of the freeways, store thing. That's what we did. But the fundamentals of real estate, of finance, are the same. You buy land, you entitle it, you build a building, you have to rent it at a price that makes sense, you finance it, and so forth. So I had some rudimentary understanding of real estate because of the industrial buildings I built in Texas. And but also I was mostly running a company, operating this business. And that was also another interesting experience, because you go to Texas, things are different. Coming from France, you are surprised. People have giant cars and, the boots, the hats, the belts, and there's some craziness. So, and I was amazed by all this, and I tried to be like the Texans. Then, after a few years, I lived in New York for a few years, in Manhattan for a couple of years. Smack on 57th and Broadway. And I used to work across the street from Mr. Trump's building. And I was a developer of residential. So I developed residential in the suburbs of New York, so that was exposed to other things. You understand about, at that time particularly, how corrupt the system is and how you pay the inspectors to get your things done and things like that. So it was, and also residential development. So real estate is more than just finance. You need to basically get things done, and you have to do what you need to do. And then finally I moved to Miami, Florida. So Houston, Manhattan, Miami. And in Miami, I developed my first shopping center. I was working for a French bank at the time, because the French banks had some problems. They had to fix a piece of land they had. Too many details. The project was called Coco Walk. Still exists. You can go and see it online. All my projects, if you search them, you will see. Pictures will come and where they are and things like that. So Coco Walk was my first project. I'm building for a French bank. I have never done real estate, retail real estate in my life. You had a small piece of land. The French bank had way overpaid for it, because the developer had taken advantage of them. So we are looking at this, and we came up with a concept, very much from zero, right? I did not have any pre-experience about this is what you have to do. We said the site is small, only 2 acres. We have to go vertical to make sense for the dollars we have in the land. And that project, Coco Walk, is a benchmark project in the country. Now, you are all weren't born. We are talking about 1990 now, almost 30 years ago. That was the first project, and you will laugh when I tell you this, where there was a cinema built into the project. There were restaurants and bars built into the project. And then you have all the retailers, some of them still exist, like Gap, Banana Republic, and people like Limited. That was never done before. So you're not used to it, but that was like a no-no. A mall was a mall, restaurants were restaurants, and you never mix all those things together. But this is where being an engineer, so thinks the problem from go to basics, what do we do, create density. Then coming from the French and Turkish cultures, importance of food, so add some restaurant, do some outdoor seating. When I did that project in Miami, in Dade County, now it's called Miami-Dade County, having outdoors eating was not allowed, was against the code, health reasons. So you can imagine all Lincoln Road or Miami Beach or all those things without outdoor seating. So we were one of the first projects who get those rules modified so you can basically eat outside. So for me that was important because I grew up in Istanbul on the Bosphorus. We'd go out and eat, and have evenings together with a drink and watch the sun rise or set or whatever. And this project, Coco Walk in Miami, exceeded, all our expectations. I will tell you the story. I came, that was my first trip to Columbus. So we are talking about 1988, 9. And so we are trying to lease this project, a bunch of French guys who have never done that before in their lives. We had the cinema on the 3rd level. Nobody had ever put a cinema in a project, let alone on the 3rd level. And we did not have a tenant. We were building a cinema without having a cinema tenant, which is something you don't do. You get your anchors first and then you build a building. But we were able to finance it because our lenders were the very bank who has been taken advantage of and who basically could still loan money to develop the project. An American bank cannot do that. When you have a real estate that has been foreclosed on, then you can only maintain it and get it off your books. The French banks went with other rules at the time. Today is not quite the same. So they basically give us the money to do whatever we thought was right. And what we're doing was something that nobody's ever done before. So the project is empty. We don't have a tenant. And it's getting, getting nervous. We had tried at that time Limited. The famous Victoria's Secret company at that time it was called Limited. And they had a concept called Limited Express, at that time, Express and Limited were only one. Today, they are two separate companies. So Limited Express was doing 10,000 square foot stores, and but we could not get them. So I flew to Columbus, my first ever trip in 1987, 30 years ago. So come to Columbus, land to this airport. The cars were parked on a gravel parking lot in front of the terminal. It's like, it's pickup trucks and things. So anyway, so somehow I get to Limited's headquarters. It was also February. I remember it was 0 degrees. I'm a European, so 0 degrees, you think Celsius always, that freezing temperature, but 0 degrees was Fahrenheit. So you're talking about, 0 degrees, really cold. So get to L Brand's headquarters like they are today, and I meet with a gentleman whose name is Jamie Bersani. Maybe some of you might know. He's the head of real estate of L Brands today. But at the time, he was just one of the junior guys in charge of Florida. So I go and meet with him, and I say, you turned us down. We would like to make a deal with you. What is the problem? Why can my leasing people make a deal with your company? With 10,000 square foot, we have a location and everything else. His point was, look, he said, how many department stores do you have in your project? Well, that project was only 140,000 square feet. There was no department stores. So I said, no department stores. He says, then who are your anchors? I said, well, a cinema, which I didn't have yet. But, it was going to be a cinema. So the guy says, cinema as an anchor in a shopping center? Yeah. Then he said, okay, 1 or 2 levels? I said, no, it's going to be 4 levels. 4 levels. And that's not many 4-level malls, maybe in Manhattan. And then he says, air conditioned, it's hot in Miami. No, I said, it's all open air, because we want nature to be in the environment. And he said, how many of those have you done before? Nothing, right? Never. So he says, well, on my questions, you checked the wrong side on every answer. He said, we cannot put a store there. But that was a time where, I was young and I didn't, nothing scared me. I said, so what can I do so we make a deal? He said, look, if you pay me 10% of your sales and you give me $100 a square foot so I can build a store, $100 a square foot would be today $300 a square foot. I can build a store, then I will come in, put my merchandise, you pay me 10%, and after 2 years, if I don't do a certain number, then I can get out. I didn't know any better. I said yes. So that was my first tenant. Now, at an American bank, a tenant who pays you 10% of their sales, without any base rent, any guaranteed income would be, that's not a tenant, right? You just loaned someone the space to put shelves and you paid for the store to be built on top of that. So, but then I took that deal and I convinced Gap and Banana Republic to come because I pretended I had L Brand, which I did, Limited Express, but the deal was bad. With those guys, I made a real deal. Then I went back to Jamie and I said, now I would like to have Victoria's Secret. So Victoria's Secret, but now I want to make a real deal because look, now I have Gap and Banana Republic, so we made a deal, etc. To make a long story short, when the project opened, and this will tie to Easton in a minute, when the project opened, those stores, the Express did $700 a square foot, which in today's dollars would be over $2,000 a square foot. So I was getting 10% rent, which would be $200 a square foot today, which is about, even at Easton today, that would be double the rents we get. So it was extremely successful, and Banana Republic and Gap were doing $1,200 and $1,500 a square foot. At that time, on their dollars, in today's dollars, like $4,000 a square foot. They could not keep merchandise. The cinema became the #1 cinema in the marketplace. Suddenly, the guy, who had never done retail in his life, put that thing together, and so on. We created a project that was extremely successful because it created a sense of place where you combine entertainment and dining at the same time and things like that. And that project became a benchmark in the industry, which started a whole phase after 1990 to about 2005 of environments similar to that. Then people start integrating cinemas in environments, restaurants and bars and things like that. But why it's important today is that unknown to me at the time, I did not even know who Les Wexner was at the time. I've just made a deal with Jamie in Columbus in the basement of the building. And unknown to me, he was surprised, Mr. Wexner, that store was #1 in the chain. and obviously not a recognized name as a developer. That was not Simon or General Growth or any name he knew. And also it was an odd project. No Anchor, no department store, no Macy's, no Nordstrom's, no nothing. And so he was surprised. And, anyway, he appreciated what we did, I guess, and we forgot about it. I started my own company years later. And one day I get contacted by someone from L Brands who sees another project I was working on in Houston and invites me for an interview. He said, we really would like to do something unique in Columbus. My boss, Mr. Wexler, would like to do something unique. And we are looking for developers who think outside the box to help us, develop where Easton is. I was very flattered that someone would call me. So I said, okay, well, I would be more than happy to come. So that was my second trip to Columbus. And they for an interview, and they're interviewing some very big developers at the same time, particularly the developer of a project in Las Vegas, maybe the Caesars Forum. That's a project developed by a Canadian developer. And so they were talking to him. That was an unusual thing with talking sculptures, skies changing colors and things like that. And I was kind of the Coco Walk guy. And then when Mr. Wexner discovered, he had no idea that I was the one who had done the Coco Walk project, 10 years ago or 8 years ago. Then he wanted us to become his partner and the developer of Easton in Columbus. So that project in Coconut Grove, that outside the box project, landed me in Columbus to be in charge of, developing Easton. So we started looking at Easton 20-some years ago, 22 years ago maybe, and we said, so what are we going to do here? And there, basically, if you look the central building at Easton, the one where the cinema is, where you have Filson's and Lush on one side. The big building with it looks like a train station, that building is actually an exact replica of Coco Walk with a roof on it. Because at that time, I didn't know what to do. That worked, so that's I'm going to copy here. But then when I brought that 2-acre project in the middle of the cornfields, and there were still deer running in the woods, it looked like a postage stamp in the middle of nowhere. It would be like my project was like 4 chairs worth in the middle of this room. It looked like in Coconut Grove, it's in, they were building to the right, to the left, palm trees everywhere. It's a dense urban environment. This looked wrong. So said, now I know why they got me here, but I cannot just do that. So what do I do? And then I had an idea. I told myself, I should not be thinking in terms of Coco Walk, my little project, but I need to think in terms of Coconut Grove, the neighborhood in which it is. Imagine Coconut Grove like the short north, right? And I'm short north today. And then I'm in it having 2-acre piece, and I build this thing I'm describing to you. But the rest of Coconut Grove had restaurants, had bars, had a hotel, had office buildings, had some apartments, had boutiques and things like that. So I told myself, I need to think that I'm replicating at Easton all of Coconut Grove. And so I kind of studied the size of that market, and I said, okay, how many hotel rooms can justify, how many this can do, etc. So we created the first phase of Easton, which was basically kind of an expanded version of Coco Walk with more streets, more things here. That project was another benchmark in the industry because people thought that what we are doing in Coconut Grove was really for the hot climates. It was good for Phoenix, for San Diego, for South Florida. Nobody thought that an open air project could make sense up north. And we did that in a place, as you know, we have 40 inches of snow and it gets cold in the winter. And there, that was daring because, frankly, at the beginning there were comments, not to my face, but essentially this guy speaking with a funny accent, he's coming from Florida and he wants to build an open air project and we have 40 inches of snow. Where is he coming from? But then, with less, craziness is possible. So we did it. And this project also, when it opened 20 years ago, and some of you maybe were not born yet, when it opened, was also a major success because, I remember the papers of the first day, the comments from people saying, I feel like in Disney here. That doesn't look like Columbus. Or people saying, for the first time, I'm not embarrassed inviting my friends to come and see us because they can come into we can show them something that, they don't have. And that was 20 years ago. I think Easton, even today, I think is a reasonably good project. But then it was extremely revolutionary, 20 years ago. And that project went and we added the second phase and so forth, become very successful. So the idea, so the question is, where's the idea of Eastern came from? I gave you kind of the history, the short version of it, but there's another history which is interesting also. So one day I get a phone call from my architect who had done Eastern, say, Yaromir, he said, we are building a project in Istanbul, and these developers I'm working with, you know, they don't understand how to do open air space. They want to put everything enclosed like the traditional enclosed malls. Do you mind if you come to show them Eastern and spend some time with you? I said, no, welcome. I mean, we as a company, I mean, we have a reputation, we share all knowledge. I mean, we consider that even the business knowledge should be shared, because we don't want to die with the music in us. I mean, we want to make sure that, you know, as many people as possible use our knowledge, because how many projects can I do in my lifetime? 6, 8, 10, you know, and if by influencing, you know, 20 other people, we can get 20 more projects, when that's good for everybody else. So they came, they looked, we showed them, I speak Turkish, so that was interesting always. And finally they decided to go create an open air section in their project. It's a project called Istanbul Park. Maybe not today, because now there's the Singapore airport project, but before that, I would say it's one of the top 5 projects in the world. I mean, it was very, very good. I mean, because now there are some spectacular projects in Shanghai. I mean, there are projects everywhere, but that was one of the best projects in the world. So they did that. One day, I get a text from Les, it was Sunday afternoon. He says, I have seen the best project ever. You know, so I say, well, in Istanbul. So what is it? It's this project. He said, you know, we need to, you know, look at this at least, because, you know, he likes to get inspiration from things and then says, copy this, look at this, learn from this, send someone there. I mean, all kind of things. I said, Les, you realize those people came and look at Easton, and that's the way, you know, they came up, you know, with the project, you know, with the idea of doing this. Then he was very happy, but then I reminded him, I said, look, the reason we did Eastern the way we did Eastern, because also I grew up in Istanbul. I mean, it was the Grand Bazaar, built in the 1500s. I mean, the first covered mall, you know, in the world, and who's still operational today. I mean, you know, eating outside is coming from there. I like to tell the story because it shows how the culture moves, right? I mean, I grew up there, I brought here, did certain things, and then the same people from there, where my inspiration came, see things here, took them back, they changed their projects, and then Les Wexner saw things in their interpretation that he thought I should be copying, which actually we are in the expansion we are doing now. So, you know, so I mean, I find that, you know, beautiful in a way, right? I mean, that shows how the world is a small place. I'm going through the notes of your professor here, you know, talk about things, you know, so we have done many projects. I mean, we had about 6 or 7 projects like this. I mean, some of you may have been to Dayton. We have done a project there called The Green. In Milwaukee, we've done a project called Bayshore. We did a project in Cincinnati called Liberty. I mean, so we have done about, you know, 7, 8 of those. And always the fundamental principle guiding them, I mean, if you try to, in retrospect, I mean, when I did those things, they came from instinct. Today, we have a rational way of explaining it, because I teach actually many classes about, you know, placemaking and things like that in other schools. I mean, much longer than our seminars. You know, basically the fundamentals, so we had to kind of organize our thoughts. What are we really doing and how are we doing it? And the first rule, obvious, is we start with the public spaces. In our projects, the definition is the public spaces. That is, what is the street? How wide is it? How tall the buildings on both sides of the street? How wide the sidewalks? How far is the sidewalk from the curb? What's the spacing of the trees? I mean, we get to great, I mean, like the width of a street is negotiated to the 6 inches. You know, I mean, we debate, you know, whether the sidewalk should be here or here. So we are very careful with this, all based on the human size and dimension and interaction. Sometimes we make it broad, sometimes we make it irregular and things like that. And so the public volume, the public space, the volume is the most important thing. The second thing is not the architecture. You know, is really the enclosure of the spaces. You know, that means that, you know, you look at Easton, for example, in front of where there's a pop fountain, or look at the other fountain where, you know, Tiffany's is. The spaces are always closed. We never leave a space open because it leaks. So it has to be covered, and then the height of the building surrounding the space has to be a certain ratio to its width, so the sun can hit it. We worry a lot about the sun. I mean, we will tell you, I mean, we turn the buildings a certain way, or the canopies a certain way. I mean, the sun determines of many of the things in the way we design the buildings. So that creates the volume. Then we go to the third thing we do is the furnishing of the space. And furnishing can be as simple as a garbage can, can be the kind of trees, can be the kind of the park meters we use, the ones raising money for charity, or, could be signs, could be anything that encumbers the public volume, how you navigate in them, what is the spacing. Sometimes we squeeze on purpose, sometimes we open up and things like that. Then when you get to the buildings, still not totally the architecture. Frankly, we care more about the texture of the first 12 feet. What is someone walking on the street feels like. We are not interested in iconic architecture. There are iconic buildings here and there, but this is not about the architectural competition, how each building can be unique. It's more like how do they come and furnish. It's like how do you cover your wall? What the spaces we do. Then we go to the merchandising. Our merchandising is very, very careful. That alone could be a class. How do you merchandise a shopping center? What are the proximities? How do you organize things together? And then the animation the animation of the space. That means that all the things we do in the spaces we have. The movies after dark, or the concert series, or the mac and cheese festivals, and that kind of stuff. So that's the way you create those environments with all those tenants. So what is the impact of retail, of the e-commerce on the retail? Frankly, maybe I thought about it a little bit more than you do, but I don't have 100% of the answers either. We are very much looking at what's happening. The first thing to understand is that you read in the papers lots of bad news about retail, store closings, and the dinosaurs, and this and that, and many malls are closing, etc. First, the reality. The reality is right now that about 12% of sales, of the GAFA sales, are online. 12%. But the reality, the 12% is really hiding two other numbers. One of them is mail order distribution, which always existed, historically. And the remaining 8% or 7-8% is really half and half between brick and mortar retailers and the pure players. A pure player is Amazon, right? They don't have, they sell, only online. Forget about the acquisition recently, but typically they are a pure player online. Wayfield, if you know them, they are a pure player. They are only online. So these are players who basically decide to do that. On the other extreme, you have, so these are representing about 4%. Then the other 4% is all the regular retailers, Target, Gap, Victoria's Secret, etc. They are selling online as well. So for them, that's a different distribution channel. And then finally, you have the other 3-4%, which is the mail order when you order your pharmacy and things like that. We believe that, so again, tell me, well, if the only sale loss, and I'm talking maybe 2 years back, now the number is a little bit bigger, is 4%, how can it disturb the whole industry? Well, the disruption that is happening has really not because of the internet. It is because the retailers have not adapted to the changes that are happening in our world and where things are going right now. For example, today, I'm sorry, the 12% we are talking about ultimately is going to go to about 20%. So there's room to grow. It's going to more than double. So more of that experience is going to move to those numbers. But what's interesting is what we are discovering is that the brick and mortar retailers are also getting online. Some of them are doing an extremely good job. One who is doing a remarkable job, although the experience is not as perfect, is what Walmart is doing right now with Jet. Their acquisition of Jet, which is a direct competition to Amazon. And if you look at their business model, that's an incredible, adjustment of an old lady who adapted a totally different approach. Now, Jet is not as maybe seamless as Amazon, but is getting there, and they are working real hard to get there. But what gets my admiration is that Amazon loses, every time you buy something at Amazon, Amazon loses money on the retail. So it's not, retail part of their business is not a sustainable model. Walmart is publicly traded, has to make profits. So Walmart is managing, making money where Amazon is competing with a much better valuation but doesn't make money. But they make money on their computer system, on the clouds, and all the other services they do. Another great example of success is Target. Target is remarkable. Today, 60 to 70% of their online sales are delivered from their stores. So Target is one of the basically retailers who managed to integrate the distribution center into their store model. So there's one hub who asks brick and mortar and also is the hub for distribution. Only 13% comes from different places. And then, you can talk to retailers like Nordstrom, although ours is very lousy and has no inventory right now. I don't know why, but Nordstrom has a seamless data management system. You want 3 blouses, one can be shipped to you from Dallas, one can be from a warehouse, one can be in the store. At any moment, with almost 98% accuracy, they can tell you what sizes, what colors are where in America, and seamless you can get them, you can return them wherever you want, and things like that. So what's happening is more and more retailers are adjusting to those realities, and they are going to continue, going forward. So what is going to be, so not all retail models are the same. So why are we seeing, malls having difficulties? Why malls are closing? I'm sure in your hometowns you may know malls that are closing. Even in our town, you have a mall like Tuttle Crossing, which is becoming more and more boring, and then you have Polaris, which is kind of trying to hold it together, and then you have Easton, who is very successful. And I don't say that, I hope you, agree with me, if not challenge me later, but that's the order in which they work. And then you go to the Indian Mound Mall down in Heath, if you know even where that is, this is like it's over, it's done. There is, there's nothing left. So while the malls are suffering, the biggest thing that you should know, and I wish I had a board here, but I will try to describe it to you, there's a huge shift in American income distribution, huge. So we are all intellectuals here. So 45 to 1980, 35 years, 1945 to 1980. The income declared in the IRS tax returns of the top 10% of the Americans, okay, so IRS tax returns, that's not per person, families, whatever. The top 10% declared 30% of the total income. And the bottom 90% of the tax returns claimed 70% of the income. And that was plus or minus 3% between after the war until 1980 when Reagan was elected. The same 35 years forward, 1980 to 2015, guess where we are in 2015? The top 10% of Americans, the tax returns, claim 50% of the income, and the bottom 90% of the Americans claim the other 50%. The clients of our malls were not the rich people going to Louis Vuitton. Our clients were the 90% of the Americans who live paycheck to paycheck. They spend all their money, they are get customers of our malls, and they used to use 70% of the total income to spend their money. By 2015, that group who lives paycheck to paycheck had only 50% of the total income available to them to spend. Then you can say, well, okay, then the other 10% will spend more. Okay, I can pay for my shirt twice as much, but I'm not going to buy 30 shirts, just because I have money. There's only so much I need, so much I can eat, so much I can wear. And notice now in the world, I don't know if you are old enough to see those changes, but what are the two categories who did very well? One category who did very well was the luxury goods, right? In the last 15 years. All the Vuittons or the Burberrys or the, Ferragamos and things like that, the high end, with these people swimming in money. On top of that, they get tax reductions, which is even better. So it's all that money to spend. And then on the other side, what happened, again, you are too young to know this, but what happened between 1980 and now, starting 85, 89, 1990, is that we invented, Gap said, I'm going to invent Old Navy, because people could not pay the Gap jeans anymore. So, and people still need 3 jeans. Now, instead of $50, they were $20 at the Old Navy. Costco was invented. The warehouse clubs did not exist before. The whole power centers, category killers, were invented during that period. The outlet centers were during that period. So what happened is that income distribution shifted the dollars to other places, and then the malls start dying. Has nothing to do with the internet. But politically, you'll be accused of being a communist or a socialist if you openly start talking about this. That is, basically income went from the top 10%, 90% Americans to the top 10% and totally changed it. So how do you survive in that environment? So, well, Columbus, when Columbus had 1.2 million people, had 3 malls. Today we are 2.2 million people, we still have 3 malls, and 2 of them are dying. So clearly what's happening is the reduction of income on the top of the market is going to be one survivor. I mean, it's going to be very difficult to cater to that group, to those dollars. So you have to basically, you have to be the place in each city. And then the way you do it, create an experiential environment. That is, Eastern is, a good, again, I hate speaking about my own projects like this, but because you know them, is when someone comes out of town to see you, you don't take them to Tuttle Crossing, right? So, you take them short north, experiential environment. You might take them to, maybe Clintonville or other places, or you take them to Easton, because, there's things to do and the time passes and things like that. So you need to get the experiential environment. You have to anchor them with experiential uses. Easton does $140 million in food and beverage, which is one of the top numbers in the country, not only in Columbus, because around the food, emotional connections get established. If I take my first date to Easton, I remember I took my first date to Easton. If I take my wife for an anniversary dinner, I remember that dinner. If with friends after work, we go get a beer, it happened at Easton. So what happens is this little, it's like Pavlov reactions, right? Pavlovian reactions. Happiness get attached to you. The mother remembers when she was a little girl, she came and saw the lighting of the Christmas tree, or she came for some of the festivals, and then they bring their kids. That's why we have a train thing. It sounds silly for you, but a 5-year-old boy, Mom, I want to go and see the train, and then mother seeing the kid happy, then mother is happy to be there, So, that sounds like manipulation, I'm sorry, but it is. So basically, we create an environment where you have good emotional experiences, which then tie the place to you, and preferably that's where you do what you do. And then, technology a little bit. So what is the future kind of things we are doing at Eastern right now? I'll give you just one, and then I'll ask me questions. So start thinking about the question, because we have 20 minutes. We are trying to compete with Amazon. Although they lose money, they are the golden child. They are eating lots of sales. So there are 2 things we are doing. What Amazon does in the space, if you manufacture anything and you want to sell it, you have an idea. It can be a bag, or it can be a unique book, or you design sweaters with a special fiber or whatever. If you can organize its production, its supply chain, then you go to Amazon, and if you can assure them that you can deliver, they can sell your products for you, right? That's what they do. You bring the merchandise to them, and they will sell it for you. They know who would buy that product because of all the data algorithms they have. If they will organize, it could be drop shipping. That means that it can be shipped directly from you, or they will buy quantities, put them in their warehouses, like the ones, the giant ones, and they ship them themselves. You pay them different price depending on the method. So essentially, what is your job as a retailer is to design, create a brand, and appeal to a certain type of customers. And then they make sure they will reach that customer, they will get it to them, they will take the returns, and they will do everything they need to do to get the merchandise out. Look how Easton is today. You want to sell something at Easton? First, you have to be good, because we have more demand than we have space. Then we say, if you want to do this, then you have to invest into the store. So you have to spend $300, $400, $500 a square foot. So say an average store, 2,000-3,000 square feet, you are talking about $1.5 million to build a store. So we help a little bit, but you still have to come up with a number which is $1 million or very, very high. Then when the store is open, then you put your merchandise in, and then you hope you see it. But you say, wait a minute, we need a 10-year guarantee. We need to sign a lease for 10 years. They are going to be here. And we can barely project what's happening next year. So we want to sign for 10 years. And then you start selling your merchandise. You hope it works. Amazon, much simpler, right? You go in there. And so what we are doing, our response to Amazon is something we call the Shop Lab. And some of you might see it tomorrow. It's a very small version right now of a bigger idea. Shop Lab is a 500 square foot space, fully equipped. That means that we have light fixtures everywhere. You can adjust it any way you want. We have video walls that you can put any kind of video on it you want for your merchandise. Outside we have LED signs. You can put a sign on it. It looks like a painted sign, but actually it's an LED panel. We'll give you all the FF&E, that's all the fixtures you need to display your merchandise. We'll provide you a point of sale system, the POS system. We'll tie it to your fulfillment system, the Shopify, whatever software you are using, so that the two are connected. And then we'll provide you the sales force, the labor to sell the merchandise. So look what we just did, right? We did a brick and mortar Amazon. We don't want you to put any money. All we say, bring the merchandise, we'll put it in, and then we'll sell it for you. So that's, I think, is going to be something you will see more and more into the future. And your commitment is to stay there about a year, and then you go. And you pay us only a percentage of your sales. So, I mean, if sales go down, then you don't pay us. I mean, we are taking basically the risk. So you're going to tell me, well, why do this? I mean, if I can do it online, why open a store? The problem of the online is this. I mean, I don't know if you study this or not, but every customer you acquire has a lifetime value. That means that, when a customer gets into your system, then that customer buys more in the future with a certain interval, and you have enough statistics to know that a customer is worth to you $1,000. But if you have to spend $200 to acquire your next customer, using Google, using Facebook, using, Instagram, or however you get the customer, if I get a customer every $200 I spend, and my God, I'm going to spend lots of $200 because every customer is worth $1,000. But my numbers, this is too easy. In reality, your customer is worth $400, and you spend $250, then $300, then $350, and there's a point where you start spending $400, and you cannot get the customer. So now, I mean, the quantity doesn't work. It works the other way. You are stuck because you cannot get the additional customer. You have to spend money because you are online. You have no other image, no other presence, no other advertising. When you're in a brick and mortar environment, the same things happen, but every additional customer you acquire into your system doesn't cost you anything. The marginal cost is zero. So if you want to build your penetration to the market. So brick and mortar provide that advantage, and you want to be on both sides. And also, I mean, I don't even have time here to talk about it. I'm already speaking more than I said I was going to. But the halo effect, we call that. The halo effect, there's a whole publication that came out. And again, if you are interested, I can give you a copy of it. I mean, deliver it. It's about a 20-page, shows how online and brick and mortar sales are directly connected. That is, if a retailer has a brick and mortar presence, their online sales go up 20% or 30%. And the two are very integrated. So the future is going to be a combination of the two. So that's one area, right? I mean, the way we respond to this, and one day Eastern might have 20 of those shop labs of different sizes, different dimensions, and so forth. Bring your merchandise, we sell it for you. The second area is data. I mean, and don't freak out because, well, if you freak out, you should be freaking out. Anybody who has a Gmail account should already be freaking out. But I mean, as you know, is your privacy issue, right? So what's happening is right now when you come to Eastern, I don't know you come to Eastern. I have 65,000, 70,000 email addresses, but I do not know if the guy lives in California or he's 20-year-old or 90-year-old or, I mean, I have no clue who the person is. I just have an email address. We are building now a database of 100,000 names, which is enriched lists. So on those lists, every email, I will know the age of the person, I will know their zip code, I will know their sex, and I will know the origin of the information, how we get the name. Was it at the Wizard of Oz movie showing, or was it at a wine tasting, and things like that. And so now we'll have a database from which we'll be able to do very targeted marketing, which in the past we couldn't. So gathering all that data, inbound is going to be, basically our next challenge. But we have also other data. ShopLab has that too. When you walk in front of the ShopLab, you don't know it. There's something in the air. We know how many people walk in front of the store. We know their sex, male or female, and we can categorize them into 3 age groups today. And we know if they have a child with them. So we don't know who you are, but we know in general. And then on the store itself at ShopLab, we also know how many of them we capture. Say there's 50-50 male, female walking in front, but the people who walk inside the store are 75 female, 25 male. That means our capture rate of the female is much bigger. And we also know that for the ages. So we know which age group we attract better. And then at the cash register, we have a conversion factor. That is, we know how many of those people who came in then convert their sales into an actual transaction. We can also make the same ratio. So ultimately, we are going to have a model of Easton when you're going to come and say, I want to say T-shirts who go for male who are over 50 years old, then we'll be able to tell you that is the sidewalk who has the most males, and based on our past experience, that's going to be your capture, and that's going to be your conversion. Now, that's a benchmark. You might go over, you might go under, and things like that. So suddenly, we are becoming like Amazon. When you go, you start putting things in your cart. Amazon knows how many things you put in, what things you put out, the carts you abandoned. They know everything, and we'll start trying to get into that data management mode ourselves. One day, there are big privacy issues. We cannot do that yet. We could have. Anyway, we are not doing it. And there's nothing forbidding in the United States, but the European regulations are not guiding us because we believe they will come here. Ideally, we want to know every one of you as one person, not male, 15 to 25-year-old, with a child. I mean, that's good, but not good enough. But I need to know it's you, you in person. Only way, face recognition. Because we were doing it with the phones. I mean, we started experimenting with this. We knew every time, say, I did not know Yaromir came, but I knew every time my phone came, we knew. So we knew that this phone came 3 times a week to Easton. They always eat first before going to the movies. Half the people eat first before going to the movies. The other half went to the movies first, eat later. The phone, we've just followed the phone. And then later, we are able to enrich the data of the IP address of the phone, with actually who you are, where your zip code is, and things like that. That European regulation totally forbid that. We do it without your permission, so we stopped. We don't do it anymore because, there's some concern about that. We need to get your approval now. So there are ways we can do that. So that's the area we are working on right now. That is to remove your anonymity, basically. Like when you use your Gmail or you speak in front of Alexa at home or, all those things, you already lost your privacy. In a shopping center, that's the most private space you still have, and we are going to remove that so that we'll know exactly who you are, what you want, what you just bought. We are talking about models right now where we will know you just bought a pair of jeans last week from, or pants from Lululemon, and then you online looked for blue blouses to go with it. So when you come to Easton, we'll propose you the best blue blouses available at Easton. That's the kind of model we are trying to get to, but this is 10 years out. Okay, I'm going to stop here, so ask me some questions. Sorry, there's only 11 minutes, but I will stay after for those who would like to stay longer. If that's allowed, I don't know.
Yeah. So how do you manage the portfolio of tenants? So making sure you have a balance of local companies like a North Star Cafe with international companies like Zara. How do you manage that?
Yeah, things are changing. The first thing is, forget about local versus not local. How do you create a balance? How many shoe stores, how much women's apparel, how much men's apparel? There was a time that was a science. They were taught them in school. Not anymore. Today, you open stores with the stores who have capital, and then you close the stores who go bankrupt. So the market forces take care of your merchandising decisions. You can say, I want that tenant's perfect tenant. If the tenant is going bankrupt, you can say all you want. They're not coming. On the other hand, some tenants have the wind in their sails. Marine layers and people like this. Then, you open stores with them. So that's the way first we do. Obviously, we maintain category, quality levels, and then we combine them in a certain way. Now, local versus national, that's very interesting. Today, it's very difficult for local in the apparel business. I'm sure some of you study supply chains and things like that. It's very, very difficult to compete in general. You can have niches where you can compete, but it's very difficult to compete on a very general level because, the competitivity of a blouse arriving from the Philippines, you cannot make a blouse in America for $1.75. There's no way. You can do all you want. So I'm going to set that aside. There are niches, though. For example, for the time being, if you can do someone who does things only with sustainable Pima cotton, you might be the only one. Everything you do is sustainable Pima cotton, right? No organic and no pesticides and collected, paying living wages and all that stuff. So you can be successful for a while. But H&M is entirely converting their whole system to sustainable cotton. By the time when they get there, you're not going to be able to do it in Columbus, with the cotton grown in Georgia. It's not going to work. So on that level, I'm concerned. Now, so they will be a minority. I'm not saying 10, 20% could be local. We always try to find, like Homage was a local company and things like that. Where this is very different is on the food level. That's changing totally. Where in the past, we were looking 90% restaurants were national chains, good credit and things like that. They knew what they were doing, etc. Now we are aggressively seeking unique tenants, local tenants, and we take huge financial risks. I mean, I'm not going to give you real numbers, but we are opening, you will come and see it maybe, a brewery. They are going to make their own beer, so one more, right? But you see, that's a very competitive market. It's never had a beer making place. So we look like, the guys, the idiots who never kind of figured it out. I mean, Short North is full of them because you can bankrupt, you can buy the equipment for a third of the price, start making beer. You can make beer in your bathtub. I mean, it's not difficult to make beer. And when you make the beer, on top of that, everybody's proud of it. They want to try my beer. I mean, what do you say? Oh, interesting. So everybody feels they are a good brewer, etc. So we went for the difficulty, and we found, a herborist who really specialized in the historical notion of beer. Beer is a fermentation process that can be done with any kind of plants, not only with hops and rice and things like that. So the guy is a maniac. I know him personally. We bought him in Chicago, brought him here. We could have done instead, and I'm going to mention that name, a chain, Yard House. Yard House is a chain. There's none in Ohio yet, but they're all over the country. It's a national chain. We sell Yard House because they have, yard-tall glasses of beer. And we serve all kind of beers, and would have been a first time in Ohio, so it would have been a unique concept, everything being relative, right? Someone coming from California would have said, oh, I've seen that before, but not everybody goes to California. The financial transaction was 4 times better for the national tenant, plus the credit. It's a creditable tenant. They could not go bankrupt overnight. And we made the deal with the local guy. I hope he survives. Because he was unique, he was local, he had a very particular characteristic, which we believe appeals to the younger generations. They want that unique experience. So we took the risk. So not only the deal was 4 times worse, plus we have 0 credit behind it. The guy can fold everything tomorrow and disappear. So, so we are right now, in the new sections we are creating, there's almost no national tenants. There's only one True Food Kitchen, but that's a boutique operation of only 40 of them, all organic food, locally harvested and so forth. So we are, even the coffee shop, Starbucks begged us to be there. We said no, and you put Crimson Cup instead. But we work with them, so we'll have real-time access to the coffee fields in Ethiopia. You'll be able to see them on the screens. So we are trying to do things that are more local. No questions. That's an easy crowd. Oh, go ahead. I think the question is, given the income distribution, do we adjust our mix accordingly? The market forces that I mentioned earlier determine that, right? For example, we have 3 quick casual chains, right? We have Zara, Forever 21, and then we have H&M. A Korean guy in California, Forever 21, then H&M, the Swedes, and Zara, the Spaniards. And they are not exactly the same. If you know them, you know. And we decided that we will not renew Forever 21, and here they go bankrupt. So the market forces select. So right now the trends we are seeing, and I don't know if you sense that yourselves, but is that, for example, in that kind of quick casual apparel, we'll have to move to more sustainable model. That means that like H&M, the fiber is going to be more, durable, sustainably harvested, and fair. Or it's going to be things that you're going to keep much longer. When I was a kid, I'm much younger, I was in France. Chanel was not like a big deal like it is today. It was known in France mostly. And they have always a two-piece suit, which is a very classic Chanel suit, and pied de poule, we call that, with a little this black and white design. Women would wear a Chanel suit. French women never get fat, so they would live them all their lives, the same suit, and they will be like 50 years old, and the strings will come off, but that was a sign of elegance, and they would keep things long time. A bag, a Louis Vuitton bag, is designed to last 25 years, is well built, I'm not saying everybody's going to buy Louis Vuitton, but I'm telling you we are going to go to quality. People are going to say, you know what, instead of having 20 T-shirts I collected every football game and things like that, I'm going to get 4 bamboo fiber or this fiber or that fiber, and you will be comfortable that when you bought it from someone who paid everybody right, and you will treasure it. I mean, some of you, I'm sure, watch the YouTubes, Marie Konda's, YouTube videos. They have to spark joy. So people now start looking at clothes and say, does that thing spark joy? And they only want to own things that spark joy. And sparking joy has an emotional coefficient who is not only visual. That is, how does it feel when I touch it? How was it made? Where do I buy it? And things like that becoming important. We believe in your generation. So you can tell me, Yaromir, you are wrong. But that's what we are gearing up to tenants who understand that and do that. Go ahead.
What advice would you give college students or recent grads who are kind of looking to get into this type of industry?
There's two different industries, right? There's the retail side of things. I'm really not good at that. There are other people, your teachers know in Columbus. Columbus is the third market in the United States after New York and Los Angeles, where there's a concentration of that talent. There is a group called Cibas Retail. They are open to students. You can join them. They even maybe offer the membership. You can network with them, see what's going on, easily get internships in all the companies in town. That's what I would recommend that you do, because even the retail world, there's multiple dimensions. There is the fashion side, there is the supply chain side, I was last week on a yoga camp, with the woman who is how do you call that, mindfulness, the director of mindfulness of Lululemon. She was my yoga teacher. 2 hours a day at the end, I was like, But anyway, so there, I'm director of mindfulness. It's a retailer, right? Nothing to do with picking colors or fabrics, So, and again, that's one world. The world I know, which is the real estate world, I think you have to look at it as a real estate business, right? In the real estate business, there are some very mechanical aspects of it. Industrial buildings, they call them now logistic buildings. Huge warehouses, they are very mechanical. You don't need to, it's a function. And an engineer would be a perfect developer. You don't need to know anything else. And then you have all the way at the other end, this mixed-use environment, say inventing a short north. You have retail on the ground floor, you have restaurants, you have apartments above, then you have offices and things like that. So today, the future is going to be, in my opinion, a multidisciplinary approach to real estate development. And all of them, everything going forward is going to, there's two kinds of real estate development. So I'm talking now the area I understand, right? Apparel, talk to other people. Two kinds of real estate development. They are the ones who go to University of Pennsylvania, Ivy League, or those who go to Harvard, Ivy League. The School of Real Estate in University of Pennsylvania in the Wharton School of Business. So it's about finance. That is finance with brick and mortar analysis, number crunching, and so forth. The School of Real Estate at Harvard is in the School of Architecture. So both study both subjects. There are some who see the real estate development as a financial tool with, we need to please the customers. And the other people see real estate development as a civic role. That is, my goal is to make the community the best I can. Obviously, financially, it has to work. Both have to function, but it's a priority issue. And all I recommend, again, get internships, work with people who are interested. If you're interested, give me your card or your resume or send it to me. And work with people, who care about what they do, and then you will slowly specialize. Retail is the most complicated part of real estate development today. In complexity, the simplest is the warehouses. Industrial distribution buildings. Then from there, you can move to offices. And the offices are changing right now, because of the shared work environments. The staircases have to be dimensioned differently, elevators are different, the way you organize natural light is different and so forth. But fundamentally, an office building still is an office building, and the way it's operated is different though. Think of if you want today, a hotel business is not a real estate business, an operating business. You build a building, you rent it, then you hire a company who manages it. Office buildings is going in that direction. That is, the office building will be run by WeWorks or Versa or others. Newman is an idiot, so that's a temporary problem, but ultimately it's going to be fixed. So what happens is the office environments are going to be operated like hotels. You're going to come in and do what you do, and they're going to have personality, different characters and things like that. Then complexity, one more level, is the residential. People's how they live. Today the ideas are exploding. where you would go, two of you rent an apartment, each take a bedroom, and then now there are buildings, I mean, apartments designed for that, you know, with 4 master bedrooms basically and 1 common area, you know, to reduce the cost of occupancy because your generation shares a little bit easier, you know, and things like that. And again, the goal becomes the wellness of the people, the well-being of the people using the venues. So now there's additional dimensions about how can you satisfy those things. And then it gets more complicated with retail. But if you look at the real estate projects, I mean, all the new ones I'm speaking about, retail represents less than 20% now. I mean, the old model of Easton, where we were 80% retail and the rest came over, the new expansion we are doing for Easton, I mean, we built on 70 acres, 1.7 million square foot of retail on 70 acres. And we had about 400,000 of offices. On the 15 acres we are developing now, there's 120,000 square foot of retail, but there is 1.2 million square foot of offices and apartments. So although I'm telling you it's more complicated, it's the glue that holds it together. It's the one who economically is directly the least impactful, you know. Okay. Again, I will stay here a few more minutes if anybody would like to talk to me, but.